Doctor Who remains to this day to be one of the most popular and successful shows on television, and over the years many have questioned it, tried to get behind the show. Not all have succeeded, but I think I may have just found out what Doctor Who is. Join me today as I investigate the hidden meanings behind the much-loved series and decode the ideologies and intentions it carries, because this is Doctor Who. So, first of all, we have to ask ourselves, why do we watch Doctor Who? Why do we keep incessantly going back to this show, analysing it, worshipping it, and treasuring it? Well, why does anyone watch TV at all? Effective disposition theory states that media and entertainment users make moral judgments about a character in a narrative, which in turn affects their enjoyment of the narrative. Sound familiar? The show's been based on the aforementioned moral judgments throughout the history. Look at some of the most popular stories, for example. Take Genesis of the Daleks. This episode sees the Doctor prevent the creation of a race of aliens who are based on fascist ideologies, whilst also facing an inner conflict which leaves him disharmonised with the entire experience. So, is Doctor Who egalitarian propaganda? In certain circumstances, yes, but I don't think that's what its main intention is. We need to look deeper. Let's talk about storytelling. We experience stories to escape, to submerge ourselves in a world where we can forget about the troubles of reality and let our minds free. And Doctor Who is the place for this. What makes Doctor Who? It's you, the viewer. You criticise and manipulate the show to your own wants and needs. The viewer creates their own backstories and narratives for these much-loved characters because it gives us power, likely as much power as we may ever have. Doctor Who gives us this false sense of security. Doctor Who is a platform, a safeguard from the aforementioned reality, but it doesn't shy away from it. The show has undertones of the suited ideologies and political messaging, so it's partly propaganda and partly for entertainment. So, what's the rest? Thankfully, our team has the answers. Cynical Who is a coalition of skilled experts in medium philosophy, and when represented with this question, there was an interesting array of responses, including Doctor Who is Doctor Who is Love and Monsters. Some skeptics even stated that Doctor Who is dead, but this one quote from our very own Max Williams caught my attention, and Williams states, Doctor Who is Cabbage. Now at first this may seem absurd and out of field, but when you start to think about it, Doctor Who is Cabbage. But first, we're going to need some context. Cabbage was founded in 1974 by a Sir Edward Cabbage and was seen as an inferior vegetable by the mainstream consensus. Many were opposed to cabbage and others were even put down for their passion towards the vegetable. Throughout the 70s there was a rough battle for equality and cabbage rights, and the cabbage finally grew into mainstream life in the late 80s and was accepted as a vegetable that deserves equal rights and opportunities. So, how is cabbage viewed these days? And I don't mean where does cabbage stand politically and socially, because that's a whole nother video in of itself. But how do we as people perceive cabbage? Allow me to read this extract from the famous book, Cabbage Under the Leaves. Cabbage is there. It's always been there. Take a roast dinner, for example. Cabbage is present, yet partly acknowledged. It has a love-hate relationship with the general audience, but to the fans, cabbage is so much more. It's divisive, it's friendly, it's controversial. It's clear that Cabbage is in many ways Doctor Who. The fight for equality as faced in the early years of Cabbage's development is represented by the Doctor being played by a woman. The supposed feminism people take against is actually cabbagism. Masked cabbagism, yes, but cabbagism all the same. And it's been here since the start. Back when the fight for cabbage equality was just dawning, Tom Baker became the Doctor. Now this may seem unrelated, but it all comes together when you join up the dots. In 1978, Louise Jameson left the role of companion, and decisions were in place on who should replace Leela as the next companion. Tom Baker himself was rather keen on the idea of a talking cabbage as the next companion. This goes to show how national stars like Tom Baker himself were influenced by the Cabbages movement, and has since himself said he's a strong believer in cabbage rights. The fact that the BBC turned this idea down is straight up anti-cabbagism. Unfortunately, anti-cabbagism was still very much the norm in the 70s, despite the fight. Tom Baker's outrage at such fascism led to him leaving the show 2 years after such events. In subsequent years, he came out as a Cabbagist and faced a large backlash. Unfortunately, the backlash was too big, and he ended up subsequently only appearing in the show for short cameos and anniversary specials. So far, we've established what Doctor Who stands for and what we can anthropomorphise it with, but could we produce a byproduct of Doctor Who? For example, what does Doctor Who look like? And I don't mean a police box or a man clad in scarf and question marks. Not a commercial look at the show, but more of an amalgamation of Doctor Who. If we could compress a history of almost 60 years of the show, how would that be visually represented? Now, we could have a rough estimate, but the results here are too shocking to show. But how about an audible medium? What does Doctor Who sound like? So, with years of practice, research and build-up, we have managed to collate a single noise that is the sound of Doctor Who. And for the very first time here today, I shall reveal what Doctor Who sounds like. But I will warn you, what you're about to hear may change your life. People have known to go mad after hearing it. This is not for the faint-hearted. What you're about to hear is truly disturbing. This is the sound of Doctor Who.